Welcome to the Frenzy, everybody. It's another Thursday night in this wonderful, wonderful month of October. It's Cocktober, as a matter of fact. We got a lot of football to talk about this week. It's the Iceman, Matt Freites. That is the coach, Brad Powell. Brad, good to see you on yet another fine Football Frenzy Thursday.
Iceman. Yes, Cocktober. I totally forgot about that. That's wonderful.
Isn't it great?
It is. That's one of the best, I don't know what you call it, things out there. In the world of college football, ladies and gentlemen, college football. Tonight on Thursday Night Football, I heard it referred to as the Icy Hot Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Between Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco dueling it out. So we'll see how that goes and see if Joe Flacco's in, if he can find a little bit more magic and get a couple wins for the Bengals. But no, man, happy to be here. Happy to talk a little football. Plenty to talk about, that's for sure.
Imagine if you're a fan of either of these franchises and your current quarterback situation is by NFL standards, geriatric quarterbacks. And if you don't win the Super Bowl this year, you literally have no plan unless Joe Burrow is able to not get hurt next year. But if you're the Steelers, you have nothing. And you're trotting out Aaron Rodgers, praying, I would assume, that you're going to win the Super Bowl this year. But if you don't, that's all you got, man.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I'm sure that's obviously his standard for himself. And I mean, the Steelers, they're one of those organizations that they're always, striving to win the Super Bowl, I think. But after the way the last few years have gone for him, I think he'd be happy with just having a good year, making the playoffs, maybe winning a playoff game. Just putting him in a position to go out on some semblance of a high note, assuming he's done after this year.
I mean, if he's not done after this year, then kudos to him. But I don't even know if he cares about winning a Super Bowl. I feel like he wants to prove to everybody that the Jets' tenure wasn't what it looked like. He was injured for one.
Sure.
They were terrible for a second. He makes the playoffs, and he's part of the reason why, then I think he gets to pat himself on the back a little bit and say, look what I did.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that is, it seems right up his alley in terms of his personality and demeanor and the things that he values.
What are you saying?
And I just think Aaron Rodgers likes Aaron Rodgers a whole bunch. And I mean, I'm not going to beat anybody up too bad for having a lot of confidence. And the guy's, he certainly has earned it. But no, I mean, I think he's looked pretty decent so far this year. And, that's funny. Some point in time when I have more time to maybe dig into it and actually give thoughts, maybe this is an off-season thing, and maybe it'd be fun to get, Dave from Political Football involved in the conversation. But that is what a top 10 of 40-year-old quarterbacks, what are the best? You'd probably have to make it 35 to 40-year-old quarterbacks, top 10 seasons out of geriatric quarterbacks.
Didn't Brady just have a 4,000 plus yard season over 40 and win a Super Bowl? So
yeah,
we'll exclude him from the conversation.
No, I think seasons like that are why you have the conversation, because you're seeing guys now, especially playing at a high level late in their careers as everyday starters. Now we've seen some people hang around, how long did Vinny Testaverde hung around forever, it seemed like, and was he was just kind of became one of that journeyman backup, almost Ryan Fitzpatrick sort of flirted with that. But I feel like Testaverde was older than played longer into his life than
Doug Flutie, same thing.
Yeah. But a lot of times you see historically we're used to those guys coming in as backups and kind of doing what Joe Flacco's done, but they were already on a roster. They didn't just get picked. Did Flacco, did he get traded for, or was he sitting at home?
No, he didn't.
Browns?
He was with the Browns. He
And
was starting with the Browns.
there's 7 quarterback rooms or whatever,
They
like all
started the
those guys.
offseason with 5, and then they traded Kenny Pickett, who I think might be a Raider. Somebody can fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure he's a Raider. And then they just traded Flacco after they benched him. Dylan Gabriel is starting. Shadur is the backup to him now, and sitting somewhere is a $270 million Deshaun Watson.
Man, I would love to be a fly on the wall in that quarterback room for those meetings. I just especially when Flacco was there. I mean, just the range of ages and the cultural diversity and everything that existed in that room would be just to see how that all came together when it was time to get down to business and talk about playing football. Just, I think that'd be something fun to kind of watch from a distance.
There has to be a level of respect for a guy like Flacco, specifically because of how he conducts himself. He is what I would consider to be the consummate professional guy, which in today's NFL and even in college football is not as, you don't see that as often anymore, because I think players now have more personality. They're allowed to be a little bit more personable. They're allowed to be a little bit more themselves. But I also think Joe Flacco is from a bygone era, which wasn't even that long ago. Like he hasn't been in the league for that long. You know what I mean? Like he has, but at the same time, it's not like he's been in the league for 20 years and it's like, well, the league was fundamentally different. I mean, the league was fundamentally different 6 years ago and 10 years ago, and the windows are so short now. And I just thought about that because we're going to talk about some college football coaches here coming up, but windows in football in general, the windows I feel like for college and the NFL have shrunk tremendously. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. Because I think some of it is because of what they pay these guys. Um, they're being thrust into action earlier in their careers. Um, they're coming in a little bit more refined, maybe than where we saw 10, 20 years ago, ready to play. I mean, it's a young man's game, and there's something to be said for experience. But like, and I think that's what makes what Joe Flacco is doing so impressive is like, is there, I mean, because he's not like, yes, he's won a Super Bowl, but he is the quintessential game manager.
At his age, yes.
He has been expertly average. I mean, expertly slightly above average, or maybe like just
Better be
not
careful.
terrible,
Better be
right? I
careful
mean,
because he won a Super Bowl.
I know he did, but so did freaking Trent Dilfer. Like, I mean, it's
Yes, but I would contend that Joe Flacco was probably better in his prime than Trent Dilfer was at any point in his entire career, including his stint at UAB that just ended over the weekend.
fair enough. Do you think that? Would you say that? How would you compare Joe Flacco and his career to the trajectory that Jared Goff is on?
Oh, that's interesting because I would say that I think Jared Goff is the kind of guy who plays really well from in front. And when they have to play from behind, and this is really kind of sort of a referendum on the Lions as they're constructed right now, they're not as good when they play from behind. Whereas Joe Flacco in his career had some comebacks. If you remember that playoff game against Denver when Peyton Manning was at the height of his powers in Denver, I think he'd had 55 touchdowns or whatever the hell it was, right? And they went into Denver and beat them. And part of that was the defense, but at the same time, Joe Flacco was making throws in that game. And I think that there's a lot of similarities. I think that you're on point with that. Joe Flacco was not taken number 1 overall, so the idea was he was going to be the franchise guy for them, but I think the stakes were a little bit lower. He came out of Delaware. He's more of a traditional quarterback in that sense. He's not fleet of foot, if you will.
Played in the wing tee at Delaware, which is wild.
Right. Which, I mean, that to me makes it even more impressive the way that he came into the league, was successful. I mean, the Ravens, for the time period that he was in his prime, keep in mind the year before they won that Super Bowl, they should have gone to the Super Bowl, but they lost to the Patriots when Lee Evans dropped the pass in the end zone. And then the kicker, I think it was Matt Stover at the time, missed a 28-yard field goal to win the game at the end of the game. So they could have gone to another Super Bowl there. they had a run where they were consistently good, if not great, in those time periods. The thing that sucked for them is the Patriots were on an upswing then, and then of course Peyton Manning in Denver was on an upswing. So they still won a Super Bowl in that time period where a lot of these guys were coming to the height of their powers. And then of course Aaron Rodgers had just won a Super Bowl too. But I think if you look at Joe Flacco, do I think he'll be a Hall of Famer? No, I don't think he'll be a Hall of Famer. I think that you could slot him somewhere in the Hall of Very Good. Obviously, you win a Super Bowl with a team that's not carried by a defense. That's the other thing. Trent Dilfer 100% was carried by one of the best defenses, if not the best defense of all time. That means something. It's like Eli Manning. Eli Manning, outside of those 2 years, average, like the definition of average. But you win 2 Super Bowls where you're the guy who does it for the most part against who we all consider mostly the best quarterback to ever play in terms of winning. That means something. So Joe Flacco is not elite, but I also don't think he's mid.
No, that's fair. I mean, he's had some pretty good or had some pretty good defenses in Baltimore for sure. I mean, he still had
He
Ray
did.
Lewis and
Hmm.
Ed Reed and those guys. Um, but yeah, I mean, you can't take away from it. I think the fact that he's done it at the level that he's been able to for as long as he has without being one of those, without being a Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, like one of those really elite generational quarterbacks is what makes it so impressive to me.
I think right now for him is the fact that right now a lot of defenses are playing too high safety, which for younger quarterbacks is probably a scary look. But he's like, what do I care, right? What are they going to do? Bench me? Like, what does he care? He's getting time in the NFL, so he's not afraid to make just about any throw, but he's not going to be stupid with it. But he's also right now, like the Bengals are trying to keep it together for some reason, thinking that if they can make it to December, they can get Flacco back and maybe have a chance. But man, in the NFL, that is so hard to do because you're relying on a 40-something-year-old guy to go out there and, I guess, keep it 500 and hope that by the time Burrow comes back, that they're okay. It's a gamble for sure.
No, no doubt about that. And then, um, so is the heir to the Joe Flacco throne of above average aging quarterbacks that stick around for a long time? Is that Kirk Cousins?
Well, Kirk Cousins currently isn't starting,
Right.
and that was a guy who I was curious if the Bengals would call about. Maybe they did, and maybe the asking price was too high. But in Atlanta, you have Michael Penix, who's in his first true year as a starter. And what better guy to have behind him than a guy who started for so long? Even though Kirk Cousins is the kind of guy who has the reputation for kind of like somebody we're going to talk about here pretty soon, not being able to win the big game. I think that he has a very similar appeal in his persona, right? Like a backup quarterback, if you think about it, backup quarterbacks kind of have to be liked by,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So if you don't usually see backups who are malcontents. That's why Jameis Winston makes a great backup now because everybody seems
Yeah.
to like him.
It's it's kind of like and not saying that deep down inside this isn't the case, but you can't have a backup in the NFL specifically
Hmm.
when you have franchise quarterbacks. You can't have a backup that desperately wants to be the starter. You know what I mean? Like
Unless
I
it's a
think
rookie or a young guy, you mean?
yeah, I mean, but I think in those cases there's usually a plan in place.
Yes.
But you have to have a guy that, like these guys we're talking about, who embrace that role and understand what's required of them and what's needed of them in that role, and um, aren't. I mean, and they're professionals. Kirk Cousins is a professional. Jameis Winston's a professional. These guys are going to prepare every week to be ready in the event that they do have to go out and play, or if and when they do have to start, if that time comes. But I don't think that they're actively outwardly competing against the starter. You know what I'm saying? Like I think my point is I think they understand their role, they embrace their role. They're not where I would, this is probably a very unfair assumption I'm going to cast on this guy, but I have to imagine that Shadur Sanders not uh does not feel that way.
Well, that's really tough because you have a locker room or a quarterback room now that has two guys who are rookies, two guys who were drafted outside of the first round who nobody believes in and are just looking for playing time. That has to be a difficult situation for Dylan Gabriel specifically because, like, every time he plays bad, the guy behind him, to your point, is probably thinking, I could do that or I could do that
Sure.
better. And you want your young guys to be hungry. You also want every guy in your roster to be game when the time is right. But I think the ultimate backup, Chase Daniel, made what, $40 million dollars, and a lot of it backing up Mahomes. And what a great gig that is. You know, you're never going to see the field unless he gets hurt. All you got to do is look good with that clipboard, tell Pat he's doing a great job, and get those game checks.
Absolutely. No, it's a I mean, I think on a being the backup for a franchise quarterback has got to be one of the best jobs out there outside of maybe being the long snapper or something.
I still
But
want James to be a long snapper. 20 years in the league at the league minimum, he'll make like $20 million.
absolutely. And I'm not saying it's an easy job, and it's one of those jobs where if you screw it up, like the whole world's going to see it, it's going to be blown out of proportion.
How many
It's like
bad
the
snaps
kicker.
do you see, though? Usually it's a
No,
bad
not there.
hold.
Typically, I mean, you don't see many, no. And I mean, they do protect those guys just like they protect kickers and quarterbacks. I mean, you can't touch them, for the most part. So, but I mean, they still have to like the difference between them and the backup quarterback is though they still have to play ball when the ball's snapped
That's right.
on those plays. So,
Well, you're onto something that we were going to talk about a little bit later, but since we're talking about NFL quarterbacks, I want to talk about Tua. Tua this past week, I think we can both agree that the Dolphins are decidedly ass. They're not good. They're 1-5. They're losing to teams they probably shouldn't be. And the shine of Mike McDaniel, the offense, that I know you're a big McDaniel guy. The offense was fun to watch. The shine is completely off of all of that now, right?
yes.
They're at the end of that rope. And Tua, whenever he goes out for a press conference this year, it's kind of rough. It's a little bit cringy. This week, after they lost, his entire press conference seemed to be about how nobody on the team shows up to team meetings and nobody on the team seems to respect him or the coaching staff. And at this point, that tells me everything that I need to know that you need to go and the coach needs to go, because if they don't respect either of you, then there's no reason to be doing any of this.
Well, in Tua's case, I mean, the guy's got a mashed potato brain at this point. I mean,
That's oh, dude, you're
you know what I mean?
like oh man, it's so hard to criticize Tua because of that. Like, we all watched all of those gruesome injuries. I would call them gruesome. They're not bones sticking out of his leg gruesome, but the 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 mental capacity that he'll have going forward with what he has had to endure is kind of gruesome. Like, if he's in our age, I don't know what he's going to be like. Like, his brain is on a different trajectory now. And I don't know if that has anything to do with his ability to do press conferences or think that way, but it does kind of come up in my brain too, thinking, man, what would he be doing if or answering these questions if he hadn't had the concussions that we 100% know that he had. And you kind of feel weird saying it because it's like, is that insensitive? But also, could it be true?
There's probably some truth to it for sure. And the one thing that's always kind of like whenever I think about Tua, and I'm like, man, he just seems so, as a player, like production wise, eh. But I'm like,
Yes.
but what I try to remind me, I'm like,
Yes.
Nick Saban. Now I know the college game and the pro game is different. Nick Saban benched Jalen Hurts and let Jalen
Correct.
Hurts walk in
Yes.
favor of Tua. I mean, so which I feel like tells you everything you need to know about his talent level. Um,
At least at the college level, for
sure,
sure.
right. But I mean, Alabama always sort of just kind of ran a more pro style offense, I feel like to some degree. But then also Alabama was also the place that, you know, Mac Jones nearly won a Heisman Trophy. So, I mean,
Bryce Young won a
yeah,
Heisman Trophy, looks
right.
terrible
And
as an
he's
NFL
the
quarterback.
same size as like a well built 14-year-old.
Exactly. But I want to address this comment. And the comment is, I wonder if he said it in front of the team or just in front of the media. If it's that latter part, that's a huge problem. If that's all you're doing is saying it in front of the media, that's a huge problem. But also, saying it in front of the media is doing that cursed thing that sports players in locker rooms do not like when you air dirty laundry outside of the locker room. Those things are supposed to stay sacred in here. And the thing that I took away from it, Brad, is I've now noticed a trend that I feel like Tua isn't an accountability guy. And that's the exact opposite of what you want from a quarterback.
Well, Mike McDaniel doesn't seem like an accountability guy, you know? I mean, I think the
Yeah,
reason I liked him so much was it was so different than what we're used to, you know? And I'm like, "Hey, you know, maybe there's a different way to do this, and
gotta win.
it doesn't
Gotta
have to."
win.
Yes, you gotta win. That's the biggest thing, but it's like, maybe you don't have to be you know, the Mike Tomlin, you know, the disciplinarian, hard-nosed, like, mentality, the Bill Parcells, you know, maybe you don't have to be that type of coach. Um, and, you know, because I would say that Mike McDaniel is like the antithesis of those types of coaches,
For sure.
but there's just no teeth to it though, man. I mean, at least it seems that way from the outside looking in, and it just seems like he's lost all control and all respect in the locker room, and I don't know, man. It just seems I think he's a little over his skis right now. It seems like, which early on, I think we all expected. I don't know if you would have said that this is what was going to happen to the Dolphins. I think we all would have expected it to happen in like year one, you know. But the fact that like there seemed to be some life there and some success, and then now we're seeing this. Now, I'm a little surprised at how it's all played out. You know, I would have expected it. You know, if this is what Mike McDaniel was about, or this is what he was capable of, that maybe we would have seen it earlier, which could give you pause to say maybe it's not him. Maybe it is, a player issue to some degree. I don't know.
I think it is a combination of it being him. Like if your coach is a player guy, then you need to have guys in the team who hold people accountable. And a lot of times the quarterback is the position or the guy that you look to for that. But it all comes down to like vibes. And that sounds so unsportsy. But look at the Eagles where they're 4-2, they've lost two straight now. Even when they were 4-0, the vibes around the team, you're not feeling good about it. Players are unhappy. They're not getting the ball. And Nick Sirianni has been to two Super Bowls, won one Super Bowl. And if it falls apart this year, he'll be gone. He'll be 100% gone because the vibe is just not good, which is a perfect segue into what we really wanted to talk about, which is how well our show aged last week because James Franklin got fired.
Absolutely, and I don't want to keep beating the NFL horse, but the
Sure.
Sirianni thing, when I saw it mentioned, um, we're seeing what we saw early last year when we were
Two
really
years
critical.
ago. No,
Was
two
it 2 years
years
ago?
ago.
When we were
Yes.
really critical of the Eagles. The
We were
difference though
very
is like,
critical of him.
but it's like if you're winning, a lot of the dysfunction gets swept under the rug and nobody really cares. But the second that the shine starts to wear off, um, things start to change and that stuff starts to really matter and it gets magnified. And so we'll see if they're able to hold it together.
Well,
But
he and McDaniel are very similar in their quirky, they're different, and to an extent, in a different way, they're abrasive. Like Mike McDaniel is not abrasive in the Bill Parcells, how he handled the media
passive
type thing.
aggressive.
Yes. And man, it's hard to be passive aggressive when you're 1-5 and Capri's out there. Just saying. But like Nick Sirianni, though, is aggressive, right? He's not passive aggressive at all. And that shtick, especially in a town like Philadelphia, where it's real thin when you start losing football games you shouldn't be losing. And it's happening right now. So, like, vibes matter, I think. And to bring it to James Franklin, I've never seen a coach at that level have a free fall this quickly. And I do think so much of it has to do with it's not just the losses, it's how it feels. And nothing at Penn State felt good. And they said, we've got to get rid of him to bring back something to this program. That's how it feels to me, because that was quick.
Yeah, they definitely. I just think that it's like, why keep? We talked about it. It's like, how good's good enough to keep the job, right? If you keep having 10-win seasons, but you just cannot get over the hump and beat these good teams, is that good enough long term? And if your goal is to win a national championship, then I guess the answer is no, right? Um, and yeah, sure, there are plenty of programs around the country that would, take that. those consistent winning seasons. I heard one thing, and I guess I can't say for a fact that it's true, but we're not interested in the truth here usually.
Who is?
That when James Franklin was, I think it was when he was somewhere in the midst of him going from Vanderbilt to Penn State, he had made a comment uh, publicly in some way, shape, or form that he liked hiring assistant coaches with hot wives because it meant that they could recruit. And I'm just like, when you hear it's, I don't know, just it's kind of cringy, right? I mean, I feel like it's a little cringy, and it's just, I think though, like he's almost like Brian Kelly, not a real likable guy, but wins, right?
No.
And I think that James Franklin, in a different way, fits in that same um, category of like the guy can coach football and they win, but he's not incredibly likable. He's
He
gotten in
doesn't seem to be.
how many different times has there been issues where he's like getting in verbal arguments with fans while walking off the field and things like that? I mean, it's just odd. He's just a weird guy, and maybe that Penn State just wasn't the place for him. Maybe he just can't handle that type of scrutiny.
It's possible, but I think that this is multi-layered. First of all, I think, and I said this in a reel on TikTok, INC Sports. If you're not following us, you should be. Anyway, I said that it is 100% where we are in college football in 2025. That the stakes are that high. That a guy who's been there 12 years, Brad, 12 years is an eternity in today's college football to be at the same school. Mike Gundy was there 21 years at Oklahoma State, but he had started so long ago that college football is nowhere near what it is today. But James Franklin got there after Bill O'Brien, and Bill O'Brien had gotten there for 2 years. That was a stepping stone for him. But after all the Sandusky stuff, everything that happened, James Franklin kind of got Penn State back to where we all thought that they were when Paterno was there. And now you're looking at big time college football. I think, and I said this, I think 2 weeks ago, that Penn State and I think the fans in Happy Valley, they think that Ohio State and Penn State are on the same level. And that's just unequivocally not true. Like, if that's what you think, then yes, the expectations are going to disappoint you every single year. And James Franklin is not the guy to do that. But if your expectations are, hey, we're a solid 9-10 win program every year, and we're probably going to be playoff contenders every year, James Franklin is a perfectly fine head coach for your program. I just think that the expectations for Penn State have exceeded what they actually are, where they actually are in college football. But here's the other part for them is the floor for James Franklin was high. You get rid of him and you bring in somebody new with the hope that you reach that higher ceiling. But boy, oh boy, the floor could be way lower.
Yeah, the floor could be a lot lower for sure. I mean, because they are. I mean, look what happened in Nebraska. Look what happened to Michigan for years. I mean, it's not impossible for even some of the most prestigious programs in college football to become irrelevant and be irrelevant for an extended period of time. And that's what and I think that James Franklin would have kept them relevant. He would have kept the boat afloat, but that's not good enough there. And I respect Penn State for having a standard and being willing to make a move when they feel like
Right.
that standard's not being met.
Sure.
Because I mean, there was nothing. I mean, I saw nothing over the last 12 years or whatever that made me think that. I mean, when people would talk about Penn State being a national, I was like, I can't see it. I just
This year.
th- I'm just like, I just don't like Notre Dame. I know that the final was close and they had to come from behind again, but like at no point in time and during that game was I like when they played Penn State in the semifinals of the college football playoff, was I really like worried? Like I was just like James, I mean, like I was thinking, and it's easy to say this now, but I think I said at the time, like James Franklin's gonna fuck this up. Like, like he just doesn't have it in him to like win a game like this. And that's like while yes, Notre Dame lost two big games early in the season, but one thing Marcus Freeman's been able to do, yeah, he's lost some stinkers, but he's been able to perform or get the team to perform in big games, which is what his predecessor struggled to do. And if it's like you either got it or you don't when it comes to that, and James Franklin just frankly didn't have it. Um,
Yes, I agree. I agree with you. And I think Penn State is going to have to nail this hire because if they get it wrong, see you later. The island of irrelevancy has plenty of room on it. Trust me, Virginia Tech would know, and they're sitting on it right now. But the other element to this, Brad, is a lot of this and Penn State firing him is kind of sort of the Curt Cignetti effect. Because if you're a college football coach anywhere in major college football and you're thinking, well, I've been there for a while and we're on a little bit of a downturn, all somebody has to do is say, hey, wait a minute, that guy's winning at Indiana. And not just winning at Indiana, kicking the shit out of teams now at Indiana. You have no excuse at Penn State if he can do it at Indiana. I think that has something to do with it. And you know what I mean? I really do think
Yeah,
it does. And
like,
I think that's a testament to Curt Cignetti and what he's done.
yes, Curt Cignetti has lost 2 football games as the Indiana head football coach, and they were to Ohio State and Notre Dame, the 2 teams that played for the national championship last year.
In my
You know what I mean?
lifetime, it's
Like,
Indiana fucking football.
and that's right though. I mean, Curt Cignetti is going to cost a lot of football coaches their jobs because in today's era of NIL and transfer portal, he turned Indiana football around overnight. And I mean, that's going to hurt guys. Like, obviously, these people who have been places for a long time and just can't seem to do it, especially at a place where you have resources. And then, I mean, this is not good for Bill Belichick. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, any of these
Good
guys,
Lord,
like,
no.
if these programs that are these Power Four programs, you're going to have a very short window to get things rolling and to prove if you're the guy or not, because you know what Kirk Cignetti has been able to do at Indiana is a big part of it. And there's been other coaches too that have been able to come in and get things moving somewhat quickly. But yeah, Cignetti is he's on fire.
But this is at Indiana, which you and I both would agree. And I think anybody watching this would agree. Even if you went to Indiana, Indiana has sucked balls at football my entire sports life outside of a blip here and there. But this is on a different level. And Curt Cignetti has that team looking so elite. I mean, Indiana football is number 3 in the country. I don't think I ever would have thought that would be possible because with programs like that, they generally will reach maybe 8 wins and you think, oh, that's a great year for them. And then they're right back to where they were. They used to be worse than Arkansas. We said Arkansas was a thankless job. Indiana was a job that if you had 6, 7, 8 wins a couple years in a row, you're off to a better job. He's like totally taken that and turned it upside down. And if you're a football coach and you're like, oh, wow, if that guy got fired, I could be screwed. Like there's totally guys that are out there. And you said it, Bill Belichick. That team has looked terrible. The vibes, everything around UNC has been terrible. And why are you going to mess around if Penn State just paid, what, $50 million to get rid of that guy? Just get rid of him. Get rid of him and start over because in this business of college football, you have to. And some of that is attributed to Curt Cignetti, not because he's done anything but win at a program that many people felt like where it's never going to win.
And the more that I've learned about Indiana and their resources, and I mean, we just saw it in the extension that was given to Cignetti today.
Holy shit, yes.
Um, you know, we saw the proof. I think that we talked last show about kind of comparing Indiana and Penn State in terms of like level of program. And I think we kind of lean towards like Penn State being a step up, but we weren't. I think a lot of it was because maybe the uncertainty about, as far as our knowledge about what resources were available to Indiana. Well, that question's kind of been answered. And so it's like, I, I don't, I, I don't think Kirk Cignetti is staying in Indiana because of loyalty. I think he's staying in Indiana because Penn State's not any better. And I mean, also the fact that like he's going to call his shots at Indiana. No matter how successful he is, if he went to Penn State, he's going to have people he's going to have to answer to, and he's going to have to conform, um, and probably bow down to certain boosters and things like that. And he doesn't seem like he's the type of guy that'd be interested in doing that sort of thing. But if you're able to have the same success where you're at now, and they will probably literally do whatever you want, why would you leave? And I know that's going to hurt Penn State fans' feelings, but like, I hate to tell you, that would be a lateral move. Um,
Well, there's a couple things to what you're
Take
saying.
history and tradition out of it. That's a lateral move.
Right. But there's a couple things. In today's college football, and I think you can attest to this from Bradley basketball perspective in some way, maybe at a different level. But when you're the head coach of a program, you have to develop relationships with people who can make the money move. And I wonder, to your point way earlier in the show about his likability, if James Franklin just frankly could not do that. And if losing games like he's losing now, coupled with the fact that the relationship with these boosters who maybe make the NIL money move, like I'm pretty sure the owner of the Buffalo Bills is a big donor to Penn State athletics, and that the James Franklin really didn't have a relationship with that guy. In today's college football, that cannot happen. I think that's a lot. There's so many things as to why James Franklin's not there, but I think in today's world, you have to at least know who to have a good relationship with, or else when you start to lose, you're gone.
Well, and Cignetti, I don't know that he's had to do that in Indiana, but
No,
what's happened is he's given them something that they've never had,
right.
ever, and they've just come to him, like, with an open checkbook. What do you want? What do you need? He hasn't had to go out there and cultivate these relationships where, yeah, at a Penn State, you would have to do that. Absolutely.
Is there any of that at Bradley?
What, like, like having to,
Are there boosters or guys who are, like cuddling up to the NIL collective or something? I don't know what it's
I
like, but
mean, there's
I use it
definitely,
as because it's a smaller city and that's like
yeah,
the big program there.
I do think that I'm not like super plugged into that dynamic, but from kind of what I do understand about it, I mean, I think there's definitely like a handful of people that like make the world of Bradley basketball go.
Yeah,
And
the
um
OG.
definitely not. But yeah, I mean, with their checkbooks, they make this thing work. And yeah, I mean, those people would have, I imagine, a lot of influence if things weren't going very well.
So I think what happened with Cignetti is as soon as the Penn State job opened up, I would say many people probably thought he was somebody who was going to get asked. And his agent or whoever represents him probably said, look, we're going to go to Indiana and we're going to tell them, pay us or we're gone. And I think Indiana said, gladly, we'll pay you. I could not believe 11.5 million per year for Indiana football, which now to extrapolate that out to the coaching search for other schools, that may change the calculus a little bit. Like when I saw that number, I thought, oh boy, Virginia Tech might be in trouble if they want to get somebody of any prominence in, because you see that number at Indiana, and I don't think that Virginia Tech could pay a coach 11.5 million a year and still be able to farm out NIL money. And that makes you wonder about where these lesser schools, say lesser, but lesser in terms of maybe having that kind of money to spend on a coach, what ends up happening with the coaching search, because that's a huge domino that's gone now. It's likely that Penn State is going to focus on Matt Rule. You think you're the one who told me that. I've heard that in a lot of places. I'm not going to lie. He and James Franklin are very similar,
The
but
programs are almost identical if you think about it.
right.
Rich
Yes.
history under a very successful coach, proud fan bases, national championships to their name.
A long time ago.
Under different circumstances,
For
fell
sure.
from relevancy. Are in the James Franklin, like we talked about earlier, Bill O'Brien stabilized it. James Franklin came in and elevated it. That hasn't quite happened yet at Nebraska. I think that's, Matt Rule is Nebraska's James Franklin. And he has the same issue, which you were alluding to, has always struggled to win big games. And again, not unlike the Indiana job, I feel like it's a lateral move. Um, I don't, Lincoln, Nebraska, State College, Pennsylvania, Big Ten still. I just don't, rabid fan base, a lot of support, good resources. I don't see how one really tips a scale over the other outside of Matt Rule's ties to Penn State.
Man, we could go down a whole rabbit hole in this because I want to think a couple things here. Penn State, Nebraska, both programs that had coaches that had really high highs. Joe Paterno was there forever, obviously, won national championships. And Tom Osborne was at Nebraska. And Nebraska, like you said, moved on from Tom Osborne. He retired. Then they had Frank Solich, if you remember. I think they made the national championship game in 2001. They lost to Miami. And eventually they got rid of Frank Solich, who went 9-3 almost every year, because they were, again, thinking about what they had done, not what they currently were. And ever since they got rid of him, the floor has been really low, which is what I talked about with James Franklin. Penn State is risking now that floor bottoming out for them, and it could take a while to get back. Whereas Penn State kind of fell off. Well, Paterno at the end, remember the last few years of him before he kind of had a slight resurgence at the end, before the Sandusky stuff, they were on the downturn as well. It was just like, has Joe Paterno, I mean, God, he'd overstayed his welcome because he'd been there forever. And then James Franklin got them back to a place where I think people thought that they were, but I do think the expectations of, oh, Penn State's going to be back to what they were. It's keeping the program. At Notre Dame, Lou Holtz, I don't know how you feel about him as the Notre Dame coach, but like, he got them to a good place, but keeping them there, keeping programs there is the hard part. And that's what a lot of these coaches, like a James Franklin, like a Matt Rule, it's hard to keep these programs there. And so they keep moving on. We talk about Buzz Williams all the time. He seems to know when his out is out, and he's like, oh, this is the best I'm going to do, moving on. And coaches in football don't want that. So I'm curious as to whether Curt Cignetti, one, can keep it there. Like, can he keep it at Indiana? But also for Penn State, like, are they going to can be able to keep it to where it is? Like, I don't know if they're a terrible team this year. Obviously, Drew Aylar's out now, but I don't know. This is so fascinating to me because so many dominoes moved in like 72 hours, including the Cignetti thing, which is like a huge thing. And now I keep thinking about Virginia Tech. Like, what the hell are they going to do? Because they're trying to get back to relevancy.
Yeah, and so like on the tier of college football jobs, as far as like programs and like all the things that come along with it, I think there's a 1A and a 1B. I would consider like the Penn States of the world being like a 1B, tier 1B program. Below the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Texases, places like that. Um, and then I would say Virginia Tech. I think now you're down to like what I would call like tier 2. And I just think that the difference is, and Frank Beamer I think Virginia Tech's football success had more to do with Frank Beamer than it had to do with the Virginia Tech football machine.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so I think they're going to have a harder time replicating that success than some of these other schools we've talked about. And what helps them, though, I do think that NIL and the portal can help them. But again, I'm very unfamiliar with what resources exist in Blacksburg that are at their disposal. I have no idea. And I do think it's crucial you can't strike out 3 coaches in a row. You got to get a good one in here. And I think that James Franklin would be a good option. And the one thing you have going for him is and I don't know what the fine print of his buyout at Penn State was, but if he's still owed that money, even if he takes a job, and I think even if he is, usually the language is something like whatever you're making, essentially they just deduct that from whatever the buyout total is, so I mean, they would still, he's still going to get that money one way or another. But it's like, if you have a guy that's already, that's making buyout money, they could take a little less, and be willing to take a little less than what maybe market value would be because he's still rolling in the dough from Penn State. Maybe you have a little room to grow there. Maybe you can, with revenue sharing and everything else, that might be sort of the perfect storm of, being able to build some success and get some players in there to get that thing going a little bit. I have no idea. Then I've heard people say they don't think that James Franklin would take that job.
He might not.
I don't know why
But
he'd think he's above it, though, by any means.
I agree. So a couple things. Virginia Tech has thrown like $230 million toward the athletic program. So a lot of it is said to be attracting the new coach. When it comes to James Franklin, though, Virginia Tech right now and schools like it, who, as I say, on the island of irrelevancy, beggars really can't be choosers. Like I said, when the coach or the coaching search has started, that they should be making calls that are like, make them say no, not expecting that those people are going to want this job. But James Franklin now has a buyout that he's going to get paid. I believe there's language that he has to search for a job. So he has to actively look for a job. I don't know if that's coaching or what. So he's going to get paid his money. But if you're Virginia Tech and you're a fan and you're thinking, what do we want from the program? Right now, the program is a perennial 4 to 5 win program, maybe 6. That's not great. If you bring in James Franklin, you may not win a national championship. As a matter of fact, you probably won't win a national championship. But what you're not going to do is suck every year. And that's kind of where I feel like Virginia Tech and our fans and everything should be sitting with our expectations, is take 8, 9, 10 wins a season and have that for a decade. To me, that is better than what we're dealing with now, because I just feel like it's unrealistic to think we should be national championship or bust. We are nowhere near that, and programs like it, like Arkansas, should be thinking the same exact thing. Get a guy in there who can do what Cignetti is doing and get them to relevancy consistently. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about North Carolina and how important it was for them to get relevant in the next few years so they don't get left behind in the next
Mm-hmm.
major realignment. Virginia Tech's in the same boat. And I
100%.
think that they're in a but the ACC is the perfect place to do this though, because the conference as a whole isn't deep, you know. I mean, yeah, I mean what stinks for I guess Georgia Tech surging, Miami is unreal right now. So it's like, yeah, there's a couple other uh strong programs outside of Clemson, Florida State, they're that might be a job that opens up. And so
Yeah.
there's there's a lot of there's a lot of room though for success. I mean, because your goal there is win an ACC championship. If you can win an ACC championship, you got to see the table in the playoff, and then
That's
anything
correct.
can happen.
I
And
agree.
so that's outside of it's much easier to do that in the ACC than it is in the Big Ten. Now, in the Big Ten, you don't have to win the conference to get in the playoff. Now, I'm not saying you have to in the ACC either, but the Big Ten is going to be in a position where they're going to be getting 3 or 4 teams in the playoff. Like the ACC is, obviously one, and on a good year too. That's kind of where they're at right now. So I think that, but it also easier to win an ACC championship, in my opinion, than a Big Ten championship. And
Yeah.
so that's where Virginia Tech has to set their sights, is they need to compete for ACC championships. Um, if you're doing that, you at least put yourself in the playoff conversation. And if you're able to do that consistently, you're going to stay relevant, and you won't get left behind when the Big Ten and SEC absorb who they want. And I have no idea what it'll look like on the other side of that, but um, you can't screw this one up, because this one's just really. I mean, this is a hire that they have to get right, because I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic. The future of the Virginia Tech football program hinges so heavily on them getting this hire right.
I agree. Notre Dame could afford to not get the hire right with Marcus Freeman after Brian Kelly, because the brand will carry. They will be attractive no matter what happens in realignment, because the brand carries with it that popularity, the polarization that matters. It gets people talking, it moves the needle. And that will always probably be the case for Notre Dame, no matter what. They nailed the hire so far with Marcus Freeman. Like, I think that he's going to be there a while unless they just completely bottom out. But even with adversity this year, I would contend that outside of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country, they might be playing some of the best football in the country right now, when a lot of teams in the top 25, which we're going to get to here, kind of shaky. There's a lot of shaky teams right now in the bottom half after the top 10.
Yeah, and well, I don't know if you heard, but there's rumors out there that either they have or they're planning on Penn State making a serious run at Marcus Freeman. And again, similar to Cignetti, I'm like,
Why
why?
would you leave
Like,
Notre
why?
Dame? That's
Why?
not even
That's why I
close.
don't like. I don't. And like, is I get why Brian Kelly left. He was there for so long. He probably was just like accepted, like, this is as good as I can be here. And like, why not go to a program that's literally won a national championship under the prior 3 head coaches, like, or
That's
at
an upgrade,
LSU? Why
right?
not?
No,
Yeah,
LSU
no,
was an upgrade from Notre Dame, right? For him.
for him, yeah. I mean, as far as where he was, where he had that program, at what I would say was, probably maxing out his potential within that program. Not the program's potential, but at least what he was capable of
Sure.
bringing them to. Yeah, I mean, I have no problem. I don't blame him at all for taking that opportunity. But I don't. Penn State is not that um, at all. It's not anywhere close to that. And so I don't know why. I mean, I just kind of laugh, and I'm not even trying to be like arrogant Notre Dame fan. Like I just don't even. I just not.
I don't. Yeah.
It's not even a lateral move. I
Yeah.
mean,
Notre Dame, for me, strikes me as the kind of job that when it's open season for anybody that would want it. Remember, we said Alabama would be the kind of job where, like, no matter who is out there, if they are sniffing around it, they should be interested in it, kind of a thing. Like, Notre Dame, to me, carries that. I mean, even if they join a conference at some point, again, the brand, it matters. It still carries weight. And I feel like Penn State doesn't carry weight.
no,
It may carry weight in certain parts of the country, but I don't think on a national level Penn State carries any weight to it, because I don't think you're in the minority of people thinking, it's Penn State. They're not going to beat anybody. And I feel, and well, I mean, this is your dad here, but he's 100% right. And I said this, that Notre Dame has made national championship games this century, and Penn State has not. And that, to me, matters. It matters heavily. Like I said, Michigan is on a tier higher than Penn State. Ohio State is at a tier higher. You can even make the argument that Oregon is a tier
oh,
higher than
absolutely
Penn
it is.
State, right? And Oregon hasn't won a national championship, but again, consistently relevant, winning big games. That matters. And I feel like Notre Dame nailed the hire, but that would not be a good. If Marcus Freeman took that job, it would be solely for money. And that to me would be straight. The only job that I would tell Marcus Freeman to take is the Ohio State job, because he played there. But that's it. He should stay at Notre Dame. Why would you leave unless you're terrible?
Yeah, I think there's a few jobs out there. Alabama being one of them.
Of course.
Alabama. I think Notre Dame, Ohio State. And there's a couple
Sure.
others that you could make an
Yes.
argument for that you could call any football coach in the country, including head coaches in the NFL, and they would at least answer the phone.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's people that I guarantee I guarantee you there are coaches out there that are like, "Hey, if Penn State calls, just tell them I'm not interested." You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, I mean, there are people that just have that wouldn't even take the phone call. And that's what tells you everything I think you need to know about how those programs are compared. But you brought up Notre Dame playing good football. And yeah, they are. I mean, I didn't get to watch a ton of the game on Saturday because we were at a softball tournament, but I did get to watch a little bit of it on my phone. And they got off to a little rough start on offense, but thank goodness the defense seems to be coming around, looking like the Notre Dame defense. And so I'm happy to see that, and hopefully that continues. And like Notre Dame didn't play great; they made a lot of mistakes. They missed on 2 4th-and-1s inside the 10-yard line in the first half. I think they turned the ball over once in the red zone, and they still beat 4-2 NC State, handily when it was all said and done. I mean, it had without those mistakes, they easily probably could have scored, 50 points or something like that. And and NC State's had one of the best, running games I think in the country, and the fact that Notre Dame's defense performed the way they did against them, their offense in general was impressive. But they got to keep it going. They have to clean up the mistakes that they made. The effort that they put out on Saturday, while impressive, probably would not have been enough to beat the Miamis and Texas A&Ms of the world.
But
And
that's going to
so
happen.
there's room to grow.
It
Yeah.
happened. But here's what strikes me about Marcus Freeman. But before I get into that, I just want to acknowledge this comment here, that it's not about what you did in the 70s. It's about what have you done for me lately. I assume your dad is mentioning himself in that category, so we'll just keep that and move on. Rick, you're a gem. Anyway, talking about Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame, my biggest issue with Brent Pry was the fact that, and I promise that this will be relevant, is when the team looked sloppy, you never felt like they were able to address it. They were never able to improve on deficiencies that they had on either side of the football. This year, Marcus Freeman had what I would consider more adversity than last year. I know they lost to Northern Illinois, but you lose to two good teams, 0-2. Everybody wants you out of the AP poll. And I feel like they have addressed some of the issues that you talked about here, that they're talking about in the media. And I feel like Marcus Freeman is adjusting himself as a head coach in how he handles the head coaching responsibilities, how he handles the coordinators, how the autonomy of the coordinators, all that stuff. I feel like there's tangible evidence to show that Marcus Freeman evolves as a head coach. And that's kind of what you want is, yeah, he didn't have a lot of experience. You're nervous about that. But every year it feels like he adds to his repertoire. He gains more knowledge, more wisdom, and he puts that into play. I think that's a huge aspect that is underrated about him. And again, I'm not a Notre Dame fan at all. I'm just going by what I'm seeing. So, yes, they can have a game where they make mistakes. It's going to happen in football. Good teams lose all the time. But in totality for the season, that's why I feel like Notre Dame is playing really good football when a lot of these programs that are up there are eking by or losing. And you're thinking Notre Dame is still completely in this. And they will be in
Oh,
the playoff if they
absolutely.
keep winning. And they
Yeah.
may be dangerous by the time that time comes along.
I think they will be. I mean, that's one thing is every year since he's been the head coach at Notre Dame, they have gotten, I mean, which of course you would imagine, but like they always improve over the course of the season. They are always playing their best football at the end of the season, which I think serves them very well in the 12-team playoff era where like you can afford a couple mistakes, still find your way into the playoff. And as long as you're playing good football, you got a shot at it. And I think that's where they're going to be this year. Um, they still have, luckily, the big concern was they're not going to have any ranked wins. So luckily USC beat Michigan, so like they're currently ranked. The unfortunate part is if Notre Dame beats them, they will probably become unranked again, and so they'll have to play their way back into the top 25. Um, Navy, just due to their lack of strength of schedule, may find their way into the top 25 by the time Notre Dame plays them somehow, just because of their record. It's certainly possible, but like that's why I think it's important too for Notre Dame, not just to win, but I think it matters how they look in these wins. They definitely are going to need some style points along the way.
Sure.
And but the most important thing is just win, especially when we see all this stuff that's happening around the country and all these other teams getting. I mean, Penn State is now went from being ranked second in the country a few weeks ago to being completely out of the top 25. We were ready to bury Texas last week, and they bounced back with a nice win against Oklahoma. So, but I mean, still, Oklahoma lost. If Oklahoma piles up a couple losses here somehow, they're gonna fall back in the rankings. We're right in the heat of the SEC starting to beat up on each other a little bit. So
For
some
sure, by the
some
way.
of those
For
teams,
sure.
yeah. So some of those teams are naturally going to start to fall back, and it's there's plenty of room. Notre Dame's gotten a little bit of help to this point, but they're also helping themselves by the way they're playing. And so, I mean, they just have to keep taking care of business. They can't control anything else, and they finish at 10-2, and they look good down the stretch. I just don't know how, especially if Miami and A&M keep looking the way they've looked. There's no way they're not in the playoff.
Well, I
And let's
think
be honest, the fact they're Notre Dame certainly helps. I'm not going to deny that.
sure. When I looked at college football this weekend, I realized we're close, I think, to the first college football playoff ranking. I don't know exactly what day, but I think
November,
it's
first week of November, I think.
okay. So we're not that far away, like 2 weeks away. And we have what I would consider a large enough sample size that would let me know what teams are good and what teams are not good. You talk about Texas. So Texas got a good win against Oklahoma, Red River shootout, Red River rivalry, whatever you want to call it. I still can't say that. And Arch Manning managed the game well. He was a game manager. He was not electric in that game. That's all that they needed. Oklahoma brings back Mateer, throws 3 picks because I don't think he's quite healthy yet. And now all of a sudden their season is on the brink because they can't afford another loss. And now they get South Carolina at home, who just lost again to, I think, LSU. And now they have to turn right around and play a road game, Oklahoma does, after losing to their biggest rival. I mean, two losses piles up like that. And there's so many teams now, Ole Miss, A&M, that are undefeated. And I'm like, are they going to be undefeated by the time the season's over? Because The SEC is so tough, but college football is so much more even than it used to be. There's so much more parity because these guys move around, and parity is like not really the right word. But
I
I think
think
you
it is.
understand what I'm. But well, yeah, you're probably right. But I think parity makes me feel like when all is said and done and the dust settles, it's a different team winning every year. Whereas I feel like in college football, that's not necessarily the case, but it may be over the length of the 12 game playoff or the 12 team playoff. But like right now, Ohio State's good. Miami's very good. I think both of those teams have a good shot at staying undefeated, mostly because Miami doesn't play really anybody great from here on out. And Ohio State, I think, is really good. I don't think they're going to struggle with Michigan. Michigan looks kind of wonky. You know what I mean? I mean, Oregon lost. Will Indiana remain undefeated? I don't know, right? Because do they have to play Ohio State again? Do they have to play? I don't know.
I don't think so. For some
Okay.
reason, I thought that I saw something where they said their schedule is
Okay.
pretty favorable the rest of the way. I'll look while you
So they could.
continue.
So you get what I mean. Where Notre Dame is at 2 losses, but I think by the time all this settles, if they continue to win, 2 losses is going to look great compared to what it is right now. They have the 2 best losses in the country by far, and if that's all that they got, and both A&M and Miami are in the top 15, and especially if they're in the playoff, Notre Dame's in
Yeah.
because they lost to 2 really good teams, and the committee actually likes that.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, I don't think, and I mean, if you're not going to punish a team for losing in their conference championship game, like don't punish teams for good losses. I mean, it's not that they didn't get the doors blown off them. It's not like they
No,
went out and laid an egg. These were two games that they were one play away from winning, 1 or 2 plays away from winning easily. And so Indiana's schedule on the stretch is dog shit.
good.
Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, Penn State, Wisconsin, Purdue. So absolutely, I mean, like they should
Woo!
almost fire Cignetti if he loses one of those games.
Dude, I swear, I know you didn't get to watch college football this weekend. 2 things. Your reaction to finally finding out that Northwestern beat Penn State was terrific because that was like so late in the day.
I know, and I
And
happened
I
to
didn't
see
tell
it.
you because I just wanted you to find that out for yourself and see if you'd say anything about it. Because I saw the score and I was like, holy shit. And I was like, wow. And Mike, my brother in law, texted me, your show aged well this week. I'm like, oh boy, did it ever. And watching Indiana, Oregon, I was like, I like watching the Ducks. You know, I like Dan Lanning. I generally tend to root for the Ducks. But in this game, I felt conflicted because I'm like, man, Indiana is a team that I just want to root for some reason. I don't know why. And I know that the final score was, I think, 30-20. I'm
Yep.
going to tell you right now, it was not that close. The only reason it was that close was because Indiana threw a pick six that got Oregon back in the game. It tied the game. Indiana went to Outson Stadium and dominated the shit out of Dan Lanning and the Ducks. Like, that's a legitimate team, a legitimate win. That was no fluke. And I was like, wow, this team is elite.
Do you know who
Elite.
the last Big Ten team to beat Oregon at Autzen Stadium was?
I don't.
Indiana, like 12
Oh,
years ago or something crazy. Like
oh, way
yeah,
away, way back. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, according to that one TikTok guy, the Big Ten teams can't beat the Pac-12 teams. So there's that. Anyway, but I was like, this team is so fun to watch because they went in and did something that I didn't think they could do. I thought that Indiana was going to go there and lose because Oregon doesn't lose at home. I'm just, I don't know if there's a team right now that I feel so confident in. I just don't know if that's the case. Like, I think Ohio State can be beaten. I think their defense is great. They have probably the best defensive player in the country. But offensively, I don't think that they're as elite as they were last year. Miami, I think they're great, but I think they can be beaten. It feels much more wide open than it did last year, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about
Well,
it.
no, I think so too, which is where the parity conversation comes in. I that's the one, and I don't think it's even by accident. I think that NIL and the transfer portal have created parity in college football that we've never seen before. And yeah, I mean, we're in the early stages of it, to your point, where we're not quite now. If an Indiana goes out and wins the national championship, we're well on our way to parity, right?
Going to
Um,
that parade for sure.
and so I think that it definitely is up for grabs. And I just love as we get into the real meat and potatoes of the season here, where we're going to start seeing like, there's so many ranked matchups this week
There is.
alone,
Oh, this week is
and I mean,
insane.
yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at it, right? Like you got LSU and Vanderbilt. There's two one-loss teams. So right there, one of those teams is taking a second loss,
Yep.
which is going to be and again, I mean, and unfortunately still early in their SEC slate, like likely to take another one, which is going to knock them out of contention. I mean,
By
so
the
they're going to
way,
eat their own.
but every game like this, Brian Kelly's on watch. Like, I feel like he's on
Oh, if
press
he loses
conference
to
watch with.
Vanderbilt,
Whoo, that's what I'm saying though. Is like, oh, I don't think that Vandy can beat LSU, but also LSU's offense kind of sucks. So it's possible, but it's like I saw that game and I was like, oh my god, if they lose, I have to watch the Brian Kelly press conference afterward because that's got to be fireworks.
I'm happy for Lane Kiffin that the Ole Miss at Georgia game is at 2:30 because I know like he was asked about when LSU I think
He's
came
such
to
a troll.
was it when LSU came to they played
Yes,
LSU and he's like he was mad that it was a day game. He's like, yeah, he's like it always happens that way. Last year we go play their place, it's a night game. They come here, it's an afternoon game. Watch, he's like we go to Georgia in a couple weeks. Watch, it'll be a night game, but it isn't. So
what,
you know,
Brad? Let me ask you a question because I went to a lot of football games, obviously, and night games were terrific in Blacksburg. What is it about a night game that is a better atmosphere than a day game?
I think it just I mean, to be honest with you, I think it just comes down to the fact that the fans, students have all day just to get hammered and they're just more energetic, I think there's just more buzz and more energy because, 75% of the crowd is well lubricated.
Fair,
I mean, I think that's a big part of it. And,
totally fair.
I
All
mean,
right,
that's my my
totally
main
fair,
opinion.
totally fair. But Ole Miss and Georgia, like Georgia already has a loss, so they can't really afford another loss in the SEC. And Ole Miss barely got it by Washington State last week. It's like Washington State,
Yeah. But hey, it's
and
like just win, baby.
oh yeah, but like in the SEC, that's tough to
Optics
do.
don't matter in the SEC, though. We've learned that. Optics don't matter, man. Like
Apparently, they matter in the Big Ten
every
though.
a win's a good win, a loss is a good loss.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Alabama now. I will say this: Alabama squeaked by Missouri. I know you said last week, and this is not calling you out, but you're like, I just don't think Missouri's up to the task. And Missouri was up to the task, but also road games in the SEC are tough. This was a game that Kalen DeBoer would have lost last year, for sure. And they found a way to win. And kudos to him. And his prize is having to host Tennessee now, who Tennessee's no slouch.
No, Tennessee is no slouch, but you talked about Missouri. Auburn's going to beat Missouri this week.
You're probably right, because it's like they gave it all they had against the Crimson Tide, and then here comes who are they playing?
Auburn.
Auburn. Yeah. And it's like here they come, and Auburn comes in, and it's like, oh, we got this. You know what I mean?
It's a 640 kick in Auburn.
I circled that game in my mind, and I was like, I don't want to talk about this one, but it's interesting because it's one of those trap games where Missouri gave everything that they had and came up short. And in the SEC, you don't have the luxury of being able to take a week off.
And you're still Missouri, right?
That's
like
true.
You're not wired still yet. You're not wired to play in games like this, these high level games week in and week out. This is just another Saturday for Auburn.
Local
You know what I
weatherman in the comments talking about the weather situation in the sun, which I think does play somewhat of a role. I think it also plays a role for your drunkenness theory because being drunk in the sun sucks.
Oh, absolutely it does. And I just think that, and also not even just that, but just you have all day for the buzz to just build and everything else. Like
Can
it's
attest.
just better. But I think that I said Missouri at Auburn. Missouri's new to this, being considered a good program, top
Good.
25 thing. This is just like I said, this is just their Saturday for Auburn, man. Like it's old hat for them. They're not worried about Missouri coming into play. And I just don't think again, I just think that Missouri is not up to the task. I'll say it again. I just don't think so, man. And going to
Plus, Hugh
Auburn,
Freeze kind of needs a win because I
he
feel
does.
like
He's the guy's coaching for his job. I
he
think
is.
so.
Yeah, he is
And
for
I see
sure.
we got the Holy War on tap this week too.
Utah and BYU,
Yeah.
and it's at 7:30, I think. So kudos to
7,
them for once again. Whatever, it's the same
which
thing.
is like 5 o'clock.
It's funny because Utah, outside of that loss to Texas Tech, which If that game was at a more favorable Pacific time, it would have, I think, been a little bit of a different story. But BYU is 6-0, and yet still I feel like Utah's better than them because Utah continues to beat teams, not Texas Tech. And I feel like Utah this year is the team that we thought they were going to be when Cam Rising was there. And he just never came back. He never got that feeling back. I was it's a tough team to play. That's a program where I'm jealous because Utah is good every year.
Yeah. No, they really are, and it's like I think it's like when they lose to Texas Tech, we're all like, "Eh," but Texas Tech appears to be really good. But again, it's like one of those teams. It's like just because they're in the Big 12,
Yeah.
just honestly, they're not getting any respect.
So, do you think that if Texas Tech goes undefeated and let's say that BYU or not BYU, let's say that Utah wins out and they end up both being in the Big 12 title game, and let's say Utah beats Texas Tech and they're both one-loss team, do they both get in?
It depends, man. It depends on
Could
what
they both
happens.
get in? Maybe that's a better
I think
question.
they
Could they both
could,
get in?
yeah. I think they could. Um,
We've always
but
assumed the Big
it's
12 to be
so
one bid. That's why.
yeah, it's just so contingent on what happens
I need an answer,
elsewhere
damn it. I
in
need you to
college
tell me.
football. I
Prognosticate.
mean, could they? Yes. Would they? Don't know.
Fuck no.
Not enough information.
Who facts? Who cares? Just
I
give
mean,
your opinion. That's all I
the
want.
unfortunate reality is, probably not.
All right, that's fair. Now, I need you to break down USC at Notre Dame because I'm telling you, man, this feels old school. Like I need this in my blood.
It is, but the unfortunate part is USC seems reluctant to continue this rivalry. So it's up in the air if this is going to continue. Notre Dame's like, we'll do whatever to keep it going. I feel like USC has like proposed like neutral site games and stuff, and like why why like no like this game is a game that's meant to be played. I'll be honest with you, I've never necessarily understood why this game's a rivalry game. I mean, I'm guessing they've just played each other forever. As a Notre Dame fan, I'm like,
It's just history at this
you
point. It's
know,
tradition.
which is fine because like and a lot of like real like I mean I'm a Notre Dame fan, I'm a passionate Notre Dame fan, but a lot of like real like deeply entrenched Notre Dame fans like this, they're real serious about this one. Like, I mean, I would consider they don't play Michigan yearly anymore, but I mean that feels more like a rivalry to me um than this. I mean, honestly, like in recent memory, Clemson feels more like a rivalry to me to Notre Dame than USC does. But and maybe part of it's because USC hasn't been very good. Um, but as far as this game goes, I like the fact that it's at home. Um, Unfortunately, the weather is probably going to shape up. There might be some rain or something, but it's not going to be like cold. It's always fun if USC has to come to South Bend and it's cold, like it was a couple years ago when Notre Dame broke Caleb Williams. But I think uh, if I mean, same as we talked about, man. If Notre Dame just plays Notre Dame football, they should be fine. This is not a game they should lose. This is a game they could lose, sure. But I think if the defense continues to do what they've been doing, they'll be fine. Notre Dame still has the best running back tandem in the country. CJ Carr, I think, has put himself in the conversation, even as a redshirt freshman, as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I know that Notre Dame did lose their center, so they'll be playing a backup center. And I think my dad mentioned to me that they're down one defensive lineman. But I mean, at this point in the season, I don't know what USC's injury situation's like, but everybody's a little banged up. It's a physical game, and and I didn't watch the game. I see my dad's comment about Jeremiah Love with a chip on his shoulder. I think that guy always plays with a chip on his shoulder. I'm guessing he didn't have a great game last week. Like I said, I didn't really get to watch it in detail, but the dude's still one of the best running backs in the country. I mean, for real, like him and Jadarian Price, like that tandem is so elite. And I think that's what allows CJ Carr to be so good. I mean, I think last week, CJ Carr threw for like well over 300 yards in that NC State game. For a redshirt quarterback, it's like a redshirt freshman quarterback. It's like, when's the last time you saw something like that? And I'm sure, someone could pull that out of their rear end if they want to. But this game's more about Notre Dame than it is about USC. Um, I expect USC to be game, and they're going to give Notre Dame their best shot. Everybody does, but ultimately, this is a game that Notre Dame has to win. I mean, And I don't know, maybe there's something about Marcus Freeman and Marcus Freeman teams just having to play with their backs against the wall. Maybe that's just when they're at their best. And
It's
so,
possible. I mean, every team has an identity. Every coach has an identity. And I feel like Marcus Freeman is in year 4 now. We're starting to get an identity. And that is looking completely handsome on the sideline and fighting back from adversity. That's what the Notre Dame motto is. Now, I joke about the Marcus Freeman thing, but I think that Notre Dame,
no, he is very handsome.
oh, he is for sure. And you'll have to go back and watch my appearance on Political Football last week when Dave said that Marcus Freeman represents the two things he hates the most in college football: Ohio State and Notre Dame, and yet he'd play for him in a heartbeat because he loves the guy. And I was like, yeah, it's true. But I feel like USC is going to have to come and play in the Midwest again. They did that against Illinois, and Illinois had just come off of getting the shit kicked out of them by Indiana, and USC did okay. It was a what, like 10:30 start or whatever it was for their bodies or what have you. But I think this game will be a little bit different. I know that USC is good, but I also think that Notre Dame, I think, is playing just a different level of football right now. They're going to be at home. They're surging, in my opinion. Yeah, they have some things to clean up, but I feel like as a program, they're figuring some things out. I don't know what the identity is of USC. I don't know what the identity is of USC under Lincoln Riley, because what is it? I almost forget that he's the coach, and yet he's supposedly one of the best coaches in college football.
Well, and that's another guy, man, that I don't know that's to the point that he's coaching for his job, but he might be. If things get ugly, I mean, they're doing okay so far this year. But I'll be honest, I don't think I have not thought much of Michigan so far this season. I know that
No,
they got spanked by Oklahoma, and I mean USC, handled them for the most part, I thought. And
they did.
I mean, I'm glad Michigan was ranked, and I'm glad USC beat Michigan while they were ranked. For all the reasons we've already discussed. But that's a good win on paper, but I don't know how good of a win it really is.
Yeah, Michigan is Bryce Underwood is good, but he's young. And I think next year is when Michigan and Sherrod Moore should have a little bit more wisdom, and their players, I think, should be a little bit more seasoned. I feel like this year there's potential. It's almost like they're in their rookie year. Like there's a high ceiling because this is the first year. Last year was like a total wash. They didn't have any chance to get a quarterback. JJ McCarthy was their guy until they won the national championship. The portal window was closed. And so they just had two guys on the roster. Now they have a guy that they brought in, recruited, and I think it'll take a little bit of time. But I don't have any sense that Michigan is like a great football team.
No, I don't either. I mean, here are USC's wins. They beat Missouri State, Georgia Southern, Purdue, Michigan State, lost to Illinois, and beat Michigan. I mean, that's not a very impressive list of wins. And the only reason the Michigan wins impressive is because they had a number by their name. Um,
Yes,
you know what I mean? And and the Illinois game was close, obviously, 34-32. And again, you talked about the time of day the game was played. I mean, as much as we like to, oh, whatever, you got to play ball, like there's relevancy to that kind of stuff. But the schedule up until that point, I mean, they beat a lowly Purdue team 33-17. I mean, it's not like, and granted that was at Purdue, and that's probably, I mean, that might be part of the reason they want to get rid of Notre Dame, because this would be, they came to Indiana to play Purdue, they came to Illinois to play Illinois, they're going to come to Indiana again to play Notre Dame. Um, so it's like maybe they're like, this is enough. Like we need to eliminate this trip to the Midwest.
but this is the only element, maybe not the only, but it's the element that I could think of at the moment of what college football has morphed into that I think is at the detriment of the sport overall is the loss of these long-standing yearly games where you expected to play or two teams to play each other. One of the appealing aspects about Notre Dame being an independent was the fact that their schedule was, for lack of a better term, independent of any conference rivalries or any conference, what's the word I'm looking for, requirements to play teams. And you could bank on Notre Dame playing Michigan. You could bank on them playing Navy. You could bank on them playing USC. And when Pete Carroll was there, all those games were good. Like all of those games were good. Even when they played Michigan State wasn't a bottom feeder the way that they are now.
Right.
All those games were good. And now you look at Notre Dame's schedule, and again, ACC, they have partially an ACC schedule in some ways where you see some ACC schools on there and you're like, it just doesn't have the same oomph traditionally. And I get it. It's the evolution of the sport. But even Virginia Tech, we used to play West Virginia every year. We don't. I miss those games. Those are the games that you looked forward to. I can't wait for the Mountaineers to come to town, or I hate that, And unfortunately, with conference realignment, you don't see that very often anymore. The SEC, the Big Ten to an extent, but you just named off USC's schedule, and I'm thinking, why did they blow up the Pac-12? they had so many good games and so many rivalries there that are they're gone now. That would be my only lament about what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, is it cool to see USC, Ohio State, USC, Michigan, USC, traditionally Penn State,
but not every year?
No, right. But like, who the hell signed up for USC at Purdue?
Who gives a shit?
USC at Rutgers? Yeah, that's where Oregon's going to play Rutgers.
I know.
Like they were just in College Station, Pennsylvania 2 weeks ago, and now they're going back to play Rutgers. And
Poor Rutgers, by the way, because there's no way Dan Lanning's taking that loss sitting down.
I mean, well, did you see his press conference? He had a press conference yesterday.
I did
where
not.
They're still asking him like questions about the Indiana game. He's like, guys, we talked about this Monday. Whatever. We're on to Rutgers, the old Bill Belichick. Like,
well, at what point? I mean, it's Friday or it's Thursday. Like, what the fuck? At what point can we just move on? Like, they lost.
Yeah.
They've lost before, and Oregon is not a program where you can just like harp on the losses. Right. Like, just come on.
I'm gonna throw out something here a little controversial, and it's not my opinion. It's just things I've heard out there, and I wouldn't be surprised, just because ultimately the mighty dollar is what's going to drive this thing. So, a rivalry that I think no one talks about, but is on the verge of
extinction
in the way that it currently exists. Any
okay,
guesses?
I'm ready. Oh, is it it's not a conference rivalry, is it? It's an interconference rivalry. Football, I assume you're talking.
Yeah. Football. I mean, I think they might actually be in the same conference.
It's not. Oh, wait a minute. Shoot. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I'm thinking of these rivalries, but I can't think of it right now. You're going to say it, and I'm going to be like, that's it.
The rivalry.
Wait, Army-Navy?
I think that Army-Navy playing a standalone game the week after the regular season ends is on the verge of disappearing.
Why?
As the playoff expands, I think that there's going to be a push to move the playoff up closer to the conference championship games. And the only thing that stands in the way of that right now is the Army-Navy game. And I think that, the consensus, and I say consensus, but like the things that I hear talked about are like, everyone agrees that it's great that this game happens. Everyone agrees that the pomp and circumstance that comes along with the game is fantastic. But everyone also agrees that the pomp and circumstance that comes along with the game is the best part of the game, and that the game itself, not great football. Now, that's not what it's about. Totally. And I'm not even taking the stance. I'm posing the possibility, posing the question of, if that happens, is that really like the nail in the coffin of college football and everything good we once loved about it, if that happens?
Yes. If there's no principle to stand on at all, right? Let's take the Army-Navy game as the last bastion of tradition in college football. If that goes away in the way that it is played now, then yes, what we think of college football and what we've known of college football is over. That game is not played for money. It is not played for playoffs. I mean, how often will an Army or Navy team? Last year was probably the best chance that we had to have an Army or Navy team sniff the playoff. Even if they finished undefeated, they're not putting them in. I mean, we joked to be unpatriotic, but from a football perspective, I don't know that they're putting them in. Army-Navy represents over 100 years of history of so many elements of this country that goes so far beyond college football. And people watch that game, again, has nothing to do with the football. I'm going to give it to you that the football is not what we are used to watching. Both teams run very similar offensive styles that are not aesthetically pleasing, but that's not why you watch the game. You watch the game for no names on the back of the jerseys, for the bitter rivalry between two branches of our military who have fought for this country in so many ways, but also dislike each other in a healthy way. And you walk around here, especially in DC, and maybe that's partially why I feel different. You see Go Army beat Navy. You see the opposite all over town when it's that game. It's a standalone game that's harmless and does nothing except give most of us good fucking vibes. And so if we're just going to get rid of it, then what's the point of talking about any tradition in any way in college football? Rip the fucking Band-Aid off and just throw money on the field and call it what it is my point. And I'm sure I'm going to get blasted for this, but I don't care
No, I don't
because
think you're going to get
Army
blasted
Navy
for it. I don't.
means something
I don't.
beyond what football means.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get blasted for it. I think that you're right. Um, I think you're 100% right. But I think that that's really like it's going to be one of those things where you're going to like there's going to be a crossroads where it's like, which do we choose, right? Do we choose the money that comes along with the playoff and expanding the playoff and moving the playoff and so whatever, or do we choose to preserve and protect that game and that
It's
rivalry?
one game,
Now, how
Brad.
would
One
I hear you.
game.
And I'm not even saying how would you feel if they moved that game to be the first game of the season and it was a standalone game?
I don't
Would
think
you
it
feel
really
differently?
I don't think it really matters to them. I think that game, if no matter when you do it, you cannot do it in the middle of the season. Like you just cannot do it in the middle of the season. Make it a game that happens during bowl season. Make it something like that. I don't care what you do with it, but it should stand on its own, right? It should stand in a place that's on its own. The reason it does that is because after all the chaos of the big money programs is over with, we get this quaint little game that is representative of all the history in this country. And I get it. And this is not a political statement, but right now our country is in a weird spot because we feel broken in half for many reasons. That game, though, whether you're an Army or Navy guy, at the end of it, it's all for the same feeling, right?
Yeah.
Has to stand on its
Yeah.
own. And here's the thing, Brad. It is that game meaningless in a national scale, but if that's the last shred of integrity that you have in college football, and honestly, it's representative of anything. If you have shreds of integrity left and you just let them go by the wayside for money, which you're making hand over fist already, then you've lost any semblance of innocence, any semblance of positivity that comes from something that people watch for something more than money. Like, if you're an Oregon State fan, Budge, if you're a fan of any of these teams and you've been watching these teams for so long, you watch them because that's what you do. It's not about how much money the university makes or how much money you make from it. I don't
Right.
know. This would trigger the shit out of me if it actually happened.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that. I just think it's the conversation again as the playoff expands and things like that. The conversation will start getting louder about that possibility. I like it at the end of the season.
I do too.
I think because it's their Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like they're building up all year for that. Because it's like if yes, if you have a good season, if you have a bad season, like you said, likely not sniffing the playoff. Now, answer me this question. Okay. How big of a conundrum does it put either one of those programs in if they were to have a once in a lifetime type of season and being like Navy, or Army, excuse me, last year Army, had they had beat Notre Dame, very possible they are putting themselves in a position to be the group of five representative. You know what I mean? And so
I
what do
do.
you do then if you're like, we're in the playoff? Like, but there's also this game that's in between this and playing in the playoff that we value more than anything else. But what if our quarterback gets, or you know what I mean? Like, it's like you said, it's meaningless in the sense that like the result doesn't matter for this, whatever. But like, I don't know, man. I just think we
Well,
likely will never see that happen, but it's possible.
it is possible. Yes, it is possible. But I also think that the further down the road we get in the current foundation of college football, the service academies are just not going to be able to keep up. Like, I just don't think that they will. So I don't think that'll happen. But I would guess, not being on either side because I did not serve in the military, but I would venture a guess that if Army had the chance to make the playoff and you were given the choice of do you want to play Navy or play in the playoff, something tells me that they're going to want to beat Navy. That win would mean more to them than playing in a playoff and no doubt getting destroyed. Like that,
I
you know
mean,
what I'm saying?
I think you're onto something. I think if you were to ask the players on the teams, what's more important to you, winning a national championship or beating Army or Navy? I think they would tell you beating Army or Navy.
100%. Like I'm
Like, I don't even
convinced.
think they would hesitate. Like,
No.
because
Like
they're not playing college football
not the way that
under the
everybody else does
delusion
it.
or whatever of winning a national championship. You
Oh,
know what I mean? Or anything else. I mean, it's the furthest thing from their minds, I imagine. Um, and that's why I like the fact that the season culminates for them in that game.
in a spotlight game. I mean, they talk about this game all year long, off season. Once the game is over, they're thinking about the next time that they play each other. It's unfortunate that Air Force kind of gets left out of that because I do think it would be fun to have service academies play each other and have it all sort of be meaningful. Like, hell, do a little tournament, do a commander in chief trophy tournament for them at the end of the year. Like, what I guess for me, it's like, what's the point of the service academies playing in a bowl game? I mean, outside of, again, money, but you know what I mean? Like okay, so they play a bowl. Okay, I'm going to say this before we finally, like, we're going to land this plane, but I would rather watch Army Navy than a vast majority of the bowl games.
100%. Because the vast majority of the bowl games, nobody gives a shit. Like, the
Thank you.
players don't give a shit. Like, the fans don't give a shit. Like, it's I think that's out of all the traditions in college football, the one thing that like whoever the power brokers of college football cling to with every ounce of their being are these damn bowl games. And I guess, and I'm sure it's money driven, but like I cannot make any sense of it. Like, they're the most useless. I've never understood them at all. They're the most useless, meaningless thing that exists in college football, man. Like, so stupid.
Nobody
Like,
gives a shit about the
oh,
Cheez It Bowl. All that good
no,
stuff. It's just,
so
I hate it.
worthless, man. Like, I've never like actively watched a bowl game that Notre Dame wasn't participating in, like that wasn't part of the playoff. Not as I don't think I ever have. Like, even as much tradition surrounds the Rose Bowl, whatever. Stupid. Like, these
Unless
bowl
it's a
games,
playoff.
yes, unless it's a playoff. Like, the standalone, like back in the day, like the Pac-12 Big Ten champion playing the Rose Bowl, whatever. Like, and yeah, I guess maybe back in the day when you had the AP poll and that's how the national championship was
Right. You'd
decided, that
watch it. And it was
you know,
also one of the
it
only
had
games
more
on
meaning.
television. There's like 50 bowl
But
games now.
oh, there's so many bowl games. I mean, it's you could just name a company or a product, and there's probably a bowl game named after it. Just only a matter of time before we have the INC Sports Bowl.
I'd take it. I would take it. I'd be a total whore for that because that means we'd be in a place where we are not any right now. So yes, if
Absolutely.
you want to have
I
the
am
INC Sports Armed Forces Bowl, go after it. Go
I am
for it.
surprised it took. I was waiting. I was surprised the OG didn't chime in sooner about the Army Navy game or his opinions on it. So I was surprised it
He's-
took him. That might probably took him 20 minutes to type that. But
Anyway, look, we got off on a tangent there, but I'm glad you brought it up because I do think that it is representative of where we are. Like, I think you and I
yeah,
both like where college football is in a lot of ways, but there are little things like that I think that need to remain. But before we get out of here, shootout in Cincinnati. Joe Flacco and the Bengals up 30-24 late in the fourth quarter. So we all had
wow,
that penciled in, right? But for those of you who are NFL fans, couple of games to watch out for. Mike Vrabel going back to Nashville for a revenge game against the Titans. Patriots quietly could be 5-2, and I just don't understand. But it is what it is. The Patriots could be 5-2. If you want to see the Chiefs get to over 500 for the first time, they're playing the Raiders, and the Raiders are terrible. So that could be fun to watch.
I've heard a lot of chatter about the officiating scandal with the Chiefs and Lions.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Lions, they get a good game against the Bucs. So Baker Mayfield will be wheelbarrowing his balls out onto Ford Field, and Man Campbell, who has a big set of balls on his own. That'll be an interesting game for the Lions, though, because the Lions look great, and then all of a sudden they didn't look great. But I think officiating had something to do with it. But the Lions are going to be just fine. Let's see. And I think that's about everything that you need to know. Colts go for 6-0, by the way, or 6-1. I don't know how that's happening either. There's some things I just don't understand in the NFL this year. Those are some of my thoughts. And the Jets are the Jets. So that's one thing you can always pencil in. Sorry, Cleve. Anyway, a big weekend in college football, NFL action. I feel like it's still too early to kind of tell who's good and who's not, but there are stakes in these college football games, man. And this weekend's going to be a lot of fun. So before we get out of here, do you have anything to tell the good people, a.k.a. your father?
Oh, just thanks as always, Dad, Jonah, I'm guessing. No, thanks as always for chiming in, listening, watching, everybody else that stops by. We really appreciate it. We just have fun doing this.
100% do.
We're not pros by any means, but we have a blast doing it. We have fun. And thankfully we have the drama of the football season to keep us rolling and give us plenty to talk about. And if all else fails, we can always talk about Army Navy.
Absolutely. And that game will be here before we know it, folks. You know how it goes. Watch us, listen to us, follow us, whatever you want. We're here for your pleasure and for all of your hate-filled, trolly comments. So keep them coming, especially on TikTok, because I need my football knowledge challenged, because apparently I don't know ball. From me and the coach, hope this finds everybody well and safe, and we'll see you next time. This is Football Frenzy.